The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly around the UM's Compassion, a gleaming white vessel adorned with bold red crosses on its hull. The ship moved gracefully through the star-speckled darkness, its engines humming with a gentle rhythm that spoke of its peaceful mission. Dr. Thomas Reed stood by the observation window, his tired eyes fixed on the distant stars. At 52, his once dark hair had given way to silver strands, but his mind remained as sharp as ever. As the lead medical researcher aboard the Compassion, he carried the weight of hope for countless beings across the galaxy. "Dr. Reed, the samples are ready for your review," said a young assistant, breaking his moment of reflection. Thomas nodded and turned away from the window. "Thank you, Lisa. I'll be right there." The corridors of the Compassion buzzed with activity. Doctors, nurses, and technicians from Earth moved with purpose, their faces showing both determination and exhaustion. This was no ordinary ship. It was humanity's outstretched hand to a galaxy often torn by conflict and mistrust. In the main laboratory, Thomas carefully examined the latest results of his regenerative medicine trials. The glowing cells on the screen showed promising signs of adaptation to multiple species' genetic structures. If successful, this treatment could heal wounds that would otherwise be fatal, regardless of what planet the patient called home. "Remarkable progress, Doctor," said Captain Jane Wilson as she entered the lab. Her uniform was crisp, her posture perfect, but the dark circles under her eyes betrayed the strain of command. "Thank you, Captain," Thomas replied, straightening his back. "I believe we're close to a breakthrough. Just a few more tests and we might have something truly universal." Jane smiled, a rare sight these days. "That's exactly why this mission matters, Thomas. The galaxy needs to see humans as more than just another warring species." A sudden commotion from the engineering section interrupted their conversation. Loud banging followed by creative cursing echoed down the corridor. "That would be Marcus," Jane sighed, though there was fondness in her voice. Marcus Green was perhaps the most unusual crew member aboard the Compassion. At 35, his brilliant mind was matched only by his eccentric personality. Where most engineers favored methodical approaches, Marcus seemed to operate on instinct, and bursts of insight that often left his colleagues baffled. They found him hanging upside down from a maintenance ladder, adjusting something inside an open panel while humming an old Earth tune. "Green, what in heaven's name are you doing to my ship?" Jane called out, though without real anger. Marcus looked up, or rather, down at them with bright eyes that rarely seemed to blink enough. "Improving the power flow to the medical pods, Captain. Found a way to increase efficiency by 16%. He swung down from the ladder with surprising grace for someone who often tripped over his own feet during normal walks. 16%? Thomas asked, immediately grasping the implications. "That would allow us to treat at least 4 more patients per cycle." Marcus nodded enthusiastically, his unruly brown hair bouncing with the movement. "Exactly. And it reduces strain on the backup systems, too. Win-win." Jane studied the odd engineer. While his methods were unconventional, his results were undeniable. "Just make sure you log all modifications properly this time, Green. Last month's improvement to the water recycling system had unexpected side effects." Marcus had the good grace to look slightly embarrassed. "The blue drinking water was perfectly safe, Captain. Just visually surprising." As they spoke, the ship's communication officer, Robert Lee, approached with a concerned expression. "Captain, we're receiving distress signals from multiple sources in the Cairo sector. At least 3 different species requesting medical aid." Jane's face grew serious once more. "What's the nearest signal?" "A mining colony on Veros Prime. They're reporting some kind of industrial accident with hundreds injured." "Set course immediately," Jane ordered. "Dr. Reed, prepare your teams. We may need all hands on deck for this one." Thomas nodded and hurried away, already mentally cataloging the supplies they would need. The Verosians had a unique biology, silicon-based rather than carbon, which would require special consideration. Unknown to the crew of the Compassion, their change of course had not gone unnoticed. 3 sleek dark vessels adjusted their own trajectories, maintaining a careful distance as they shadowed the human hospital ship. Inside the primary shadow vessel, Cold eyes watched the Compassion through advanced tracking systems. The commander of the Vex surveillance fleet, Dren, observed the human ship with growing unease. "They change course again," he reported to his superior via secure channel. "Moving toward Veros Prime now." The response was immediate. "Continue observation. Do not engage unless ordered." Dren acknowledged the command, but his discomfort remained. These humans troubled him. Their technology was inferior to that of the Vex, yet they expanded their influence across the stars not through conquest, but through these healing missions. It defied the natural order as the Vex understood it. The strong survived by dominating the weak, not by helping them. Most troubling were the rumors of new medical technologies being developed aboard the human vessel. Technologies that could upset the careful balance of power the Vex had established over centuries. Back aboard the Compassion, Marcus had returned to his workstation, surrounded by screens filled with diagnostic data and half-finished designs. Unlike his colleagues, his workspace was chaotic, with tools and components scattered across every surface. Yet he could find anything he needed in seconds, as if the chaos followed a pattern only he could see. Marcus paused his work and glanced toward the viewport, his expression suddenly serious. For a brief moment, the constant whirlwind of thoughts in his mind quieted, replaced by an odd sensation, a feeling of being watched. "Something's not right," he murmured to himself, his fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on his console. Marcus had always trusted his instincts, especially when they warned of danger. He ran a quick scan of nearby space, but the ship's civilian-grade sensors showed nothing unusual. After a moment's hesitation, he decided against reporting his concerns. Captain Wilson already had enough to worry about with the upcoming rescue mission, and he had no actual evidence of any threat. As the Compassion accelerated toward Veros Prime, the crew prepared for what they believed would be another routine, humanitarian mission. None of them suspected that they were heading toward an event that would forever change the course of galactic history, or that the unassuming, eccentric engineer among them would soon reveal abilities that would astonish friends and enemies alike. The stage was set, the actors were in place, and the universe held its breath for what would come next. The Compassion dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Veros Prime, its white hull gleaming against the backdrop of the dusty red planet. The mining colony's distress beacon pulsed steadily, guiding the hospital ship toward the settlement. On the northern hemisphere, life signs confirmed at the colony, reported Robert Lee from his communications station. "Their medical facilities are overwhelmed. They're clearing a landing zone for our shuttle teams now." Captain Jane Wilson nodded, her face set with determination. "Dr. Reed, prepare 3 medical teams for immediate deployment. We'll maintain orbit and use the shuttles for transport." "Already on it, Captain," Thomas replied, his team gathering supplies behind him. "We've prepared treatment protocols for silicon-based life forms. The mining accident involved some kind of toxic gas exposure." As the crew of the Compassion prepared for their rescue mission, the 3 Vex vessels that had been shadowing them maintained their distance using advanced cloaking technology to remain undetected by the human ship's sensors. Aboard the lead Vex ship, Commander Dren received new orders. The text scrolled across his screen, causing his gray skin to pale slightly. "Confirm these orders," Dren requested, his voice tense. "We are to attack a medical vessel? This violates all galactic conventions." The face of Admiral Krav appeared on the screen, eyes cold and unblinking. "The orders stand, Commander. Our intelligence confirms that the humans are developing biotechnology that threatens Vex supremacy. Their healing is merely a cover for weapons development. But sir, if we're wrong, the High Command has decided." Admiral Krav cut him off sharply. "The human vessel represents an existential threat to our dominance. You will carry out your orders immediately." The connection terminated, leaving Dren with his doubts and his duty. After a moment of hesitation, he turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare all systems for attack. Target their engines and communication array first." Back on the Compassion, Marcus Green sat in the engineering bay, still troubled by his earlier sense of unease. He had modified one of the sensor arrays without authorization, boosting its sensitivity beyond standard specifications. The captain would probably reprimand him for it later, but something kept telling him they needed better awareness of their surroundings. The modified sensor suddenly beeped, drawing his attention. "That's not right," he muttered, seeing energy readings where there should be empty space. "Computer, analyze these readings." "Analysis complete," the computer responded. "Energy signature consistent with cloaked vessels. Pattern matches Vex." "Technology." Marcus's eyes widened. "Vex? Here?" He quickly hit the comm button. "Bridge, this is Green in engineering. We've got company. Cloaked Vex ships." On the bridge, Jane barely had time to process Marcus's warning before the first blast hit the Compassion. The ship shuddered violently, throwing unprepared crew members to the floor as alarms blared throughout the vessel. "Shields up!" Jane shouted. Though she knew the Compassion's defensive capabilities were minimal, hospital ships weren't built for combat. "All hands, brace for impact." A second blast struck the ship, more powerful than the first. Sparks flew from damaged consoles as the lights flickered. "Direct hit to our main engine," reported the helmsman, fingers flying across his control panel. "We're losing power." Jane grabbed the comm. "This is Captain Wilson of the UEMSS Compassion. We are an unarmed medical vessel on a humanitarian mission. Please cease fire immediately." Her only answer was another devastating hit that knocked out their communications array. The bridge view screen showed 3 Vex warships decloaking around them, their weapons glowing as they prepared another volley. In the medical bay, Thomas Reed and his team were thrown against walls and equipment as the ship took hit after hit. "Secure the research samples," Thomas shouted over the chaos. "Get everything into the emergency containment units." A young doctor named Lisa managed to reach the storage units, frantically transferring the precious research materials into shielded containers. "Dr. Reed, what's happening? Why would anyone attack a hospital ship?" Thomas shook his head, helping an injured nurse to her feet. "I don't know, but we need to protect our research. It could help thousands of species across the galaxy." Meanwhile, in engineering, Marcus worked with unnatural calm amidst the crisis. While others panicked around him, his mind seemed to shift into a higher gear. Time appeared to slow as he analyzed their situation, calculating probabilities and solutions faster than should be possible. "Reroute emergency power to medical systems and life support," he instructed his team. "Forget the weapons. We don't have any worth mentioning anyway. Focus on keeping people alive." A young engineer stared at him in confusion. "But shouldn't we try to run, or fight back somehow?" Marcus shook his head. "The Vex outgun us by a factor of at least 50 to 1. Running or fighting would just get us killed faster." His eyes showed no fear, only intense concentration. "Our best chance is to survive long enough for help to arrive." Another blast rocked the ship, knocking out the main lights. Red emergency lighting cast an eerie glow throughout the vessel as Marcus continued working, his hands moving with precise efficiency. On the bridge, Jane clung to her captain's chair as the ship's systems failed one by one. "Status report. Main engines offline. Backup power at 43% and falling. Hull breaches on decks 3, 4, and 7, reported her first officer, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Captain, they're launching boarding pods." Jane's face hardened. "All personnel, this is the captain. Vex boarding parties incoming. Non-combat personnel proceed to designated shelter areas. Security teams to boarding points. Remember your training." Across the ship, the crew of the Compassion, doctors, nurses, scientists, and support staff, faced the unthinkable. Their mission of mercy had somehow made them targets, and now they found themselves defenseless against an enemy known for their ruthlessness. The first boarding pod attached to the hull with a metallic clang that echoed through the damaged corridors. Cutting torches flared as the Vex forced their way inside. The ship's small security team took up defensive positions, their light weapons seeming pitiful against the advanced armor of the boarding party. In engineering, Marcus heard the sound of fighting drawing closer. He quickly accessed a terminal, copying critical ship data into a small portable device which he slipped into his pocket. Something told him this information might prove vital in the days to come. Everyone out, he ordered his team. Get to the emergency shelters. As his team evacuated, Marcus remained behind for a few extra moments, making final adjustments to the ship's systems. He programmed the computer to erase certain sensitive data rather than let it fall into Vex's hands. As he worked, a strange clarity came over him, a sense that all his life had been preparation for this moment. The sound of weapons fire just outside the engineering bay doors told him time had run out. As the doors began to melt under Vex's cutting tools, Marcus slipped into a maintenance tunnel, his mind already formulating plans within plans. The compassion, once a symbol of humanity's compassion and hope, now drifted damaged and invaded, its mission of healing violently interrupted. And yet, unknown to the Vex attackers, their unprovoked assault had awakened something they could not have anticipated. The true potential of an unstoppable human genius, who would soon change everything. The holding cells aboard the Vex command ship were cold and dimly lit, designed to break the spirit as much as contain the body. The captured crew of the Compassion sat huddled together, many still wearing their white medical uniforms now stained with blood and soot. Captain Jane Wilson moved among her people, checking injuries and offering quiet words of encouragement. Though captured, she maintained her dignity and authority, becoming a center of strength for the frightened crew. "Has anyone seen Dr. Reed?" she asked, keeping her voice low to avoid drawing the attention of the Vex guards. "He's in the high-security section," whispered Robert Lee, the communications officer. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. They seemed especially interested in the medical research team. Jane nodded grimly. The Vex had been surprisingly careful not to kill the human crew during the boarding, which meant they wanted something. That something likely involved Thomas's research. In another section of the Vex ship, Thomas Reed sat alone in an interrogation room. His hands were bound to the table with energy restraints that hummed with a faint blue light. The door slid open and Commander Dren entered, followed by two guards. "Dr. Reed," Dren said, his voice artificially translated to English. "I hope you are prepared to cooperate. It will make things easier for everyone, especially your crew." Thomas looked up, his face showing exhaustion but not fear. "I'm a doctor. My work is meant to heal, not harm. I don't understand why you've attacked us or what you want from me." Dren placed a datapad on the table. "Your research into regenerative medicine. Our intelligence suggests it has applications beyond healing. We believe it can be weaponized." Thomas laughed bitterly. "That's what this is about? You attacked a hospital ship because you think we're developing biological weapons?" He shook his head. "You've made a terrible mistake." "We shall see," Dren replied coldly. "You will provide full access to your research data. Our scientists will determine its true purpose." Meanwhile, in the general holding area, Marcus Green sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, appearing to anyone watching as if he were meditating or perhaps retreating into his mind to escape their dire situation. The reality was far different. Behind his closed eyelids, Marcus's extraordinary mind was working at full capacity. Since childhood, he had hidden his true abilities, playing the role of the eccentric engineer to avoid drawing attention to his intelligence that far exceeded genius level. Now, for the first time, he allowed himself to think without self-imposed limitations. He had been carefully observing the Vex ship since their capture, counting guard rotations, noting the subtle vibrations of the engines, studying the control panels whenever a door opened. His eidetic memory captured every detail, every snippet of the Vex language he heard, every piece of technology visible to him. Lisa, one of Dr. Reed's medical assistants, sat down beside him. "Are you okay, Marcus?" she whispered. "You've been sitting like this for hours." Marcus opened his eyes, and for a brief moment, Lisa caught a glimpse of something unsettling, a depth and intensity she had never seen before. Then he blinked, and the familiar, slightly awkward engineer returned. "Just thinking," he said quietly. "The Vex technology is fascinating, actually. Their energy distribution systems are unlike anything I've seen before." Lisa stared at him incredulously. We're prisoners possibly going to be executed, and you're admiring their technology. A subtle smile touched Marcus's lips. Knowledge is never wasted, Lisa. Even here. Especially here. He glanced around, then leaned closer. Have you seen any sign of Dr. Reed? They took him separately, she replied. I think they're after his research. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. The regenerative cellular technology could be revolutionary across species. The Vex might see it as a threat to their dominance. How could healing be a threat? Lisa asked. Power comes in many forms, Marcus explained. The Vex maintain their position through technological superiority and military might. But what if species they consider inferior suddenly had longer lifespans? Enhanced recovery abilities? The balance of power would shift. As they spoke, a slight tremor ran through the ship, noticeable only to someone paying extremely close attention. Marcus fell silent, his head tilting slightly as if listening to something only he could hear. What is it? Lisa asked. We've changed course, he murmured. Acceleration pattern suggests we're heading toward Vex Central Territory rather than a border outpost. Lisa's eyes widened. How could you possibly know that? Before Marcus could answer, the cell door slid open and several guards entered, scanning the prisoners. You, one guard pointed at Marcus. Come with us. Marcus stood calmly, giving Lisa a reassuring nod before following the guards. They led him through the ship's corridors, unaware that his eyes were capturing every detail of the ship's layout and systems. They brought him to a laboratory where several Vex scientists were examining equipment salvaged from the Compassion. To his surprise, Dr. Reed was also there, still restrained but apparently being forced to explain the human technology. This is the engineer, a Vex scientist said to Thomas. He will assist you in reconstructing the power systems for your medical devices. Thomas looked up, relief washing over his face at seeing another crew member alive. Marcus, are you hurt? I'm fine, Doctor, Marcus replied evenly, then turned to the Vex. I'll need tools and access to power specifications if you want me to make anything work. The lead Vex scientist studied him suspiciously. You seem very compliant. Marcus shrugged. I'm an engineer. I fix things. That's my job. Besides, this equipment helps people. Why wouldn't I want to make it work? His simple logic seemed to satisfy the Vex, who gestured to a workstation. Begin there. Any attempt to sabotage or create weapons will result in immediate execution. As Marcus began working alongside Thomas, he kept his movements deliberate and slightly clumsy, maintaining his facade of being merely a competent engineer. When the Vex moved out of earshot, he whispered to Thomas, Their power systems have a fundamental flaw in the containment field algorithms. They're using a base 12 calculation where a prime number sequence would be more stable. Thomas looked at him strangely. Marcus, how do you know that? And why are you telling me about alien mathematics at a time like this? Because, Marcus said, his voice barely audible as his hands continued working, I can use that flaw to our advantage, but I need your research data. Not the official version, the complete version with all your notes on cross-species application. Thomas's eyes widened. How did you know about... I've always known, Marcus cut him off gently. Your work is brilliant, Doctor, and combined with what I'm learning about Vex technology, it might be our only chance. For the first time, Thomas saw Marcus clearly, not as the odd engineer with unusual habits, but as something far more. The calm intelligence in his eyes, the precise way his hands moved, despite his pretense of clumsiness, the depth of understanding he displayed about alien technology he'd only just encountered. Who are you really, Marcus? Thomas whispered. Marcus's lips curved in a small smile. Just an engineer who sees patterns others miss. And right now, I see a pattern that might get us out of here if you're willing to trust me. After a moment's hesitation, Thomas nodded. What do you need me to do? For now, just teach me everything about your research, every detail, and when the time comes, be ready to move quickly. Marcus glanced at the Vex scientists, who were engrossed in their own work. They have no idea what humans are truly capable of. It's time they learned. As the two men worked, seemingly cooperating with their captors, a plan began to form. A plan that would soon shake the foundations of Vex dominance and change the course of galactic history. 3 days had passed since the capture of the Compassion. In the laboratory aboard the Vex vessel, Marcus Green worked with steady hands on what appeared to be a power converter for Dr. Reed's medical equipment. The Vex guards had grown accustomed to his presence, their vigilance relaxing as the human seemed focused only on his technical task. What they didn't realize was that each component Marcus touched was being subtly modified. Each circuit he repaired contained hidden alterations, invisible to standard inspections. He worked openly, hiding his true intentions behind a mask of simple cooperation. "Pass me that molecular bonder," Marcus said to Thomas, who stood nearby examining cellular samples. As Thomas handed him the tool, Marcus whispered, "Tonight, 3rd shift rotation. Be ready." Thomas gave a barely perceptible nod, his expression unchanged. Over the past days he had witnessed Marcus's extraordinary abilities firsthand. The engineer absorbed and analyzed Vex technology at an impossible rate, identifying weaknesses and opportunities that should have taken teams of specialists months to discover. In the prisoner holding area, Captain Jane Wilson had been organizing, her crew quietly preparing them for any opportunity. She had noticed that Marcus and Thomas hadn't returned to the general cells, and while she worried for their safety, she also suspected they might be working on something important. "Captain," Lisa whispered during the dim night cycle lighting, "do you think there's any chance of rescue?" Jane considered her words carefully, aware that the Vex might be monitoring conversations. "Humanity doesn't abandon its own. We need to stay strong and be ready to act when the moment comes." What Jane didn't know was how soon that moment would arrive. In his small work area, Marcus had completed the final adjustments to what appeared to be a simple diagnostic tool. In reality, it was a device that could temporarily disrupt the Vex ship's internal security systems. The components had been gathered one by one, bits of seemingly harmless technology repurposed through Marcus's unique understanding. When the 3rd shift began and the laboratory staff changed, Marcus activated his device with a subtle movement. Throughout the ship, security monitors flickered briefly before resuming normal function. To the Vex, it appeared to be a minor power fluctuation. In reality, Marcus had just created a 3-minute blind spot in their surveillance system. "Now," he said to Thomas, his voice suddenly commanding. Gone was the awkward engineer, replaced by someone with absolute confidence and authority. Thomas didn't hesitate. He gathered the critical samples of his research while Marcus moved to a nearby terminal, his fingers flying across the alien interface with impossible speed. "What are you doing?" Thomas asked, keeping his voice low. "Creating a distraction and securing our escape route," Marcus replied without looking up. "I've been mapping the ship's systems for days. There's a maintenance shuttle in Bay 4 with minimal security." On the terminal screen, Vex symbols flashed rapidly as Marcus executed commands that should have been impossible for a human to understand, let alone implement. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. "Fire suppression systems in the engine room," Marcus explained with a small smile. "No actual fire, but it will draw attention and personnel away from our path." He pulled a small device from beneath his workstation, a makeshift communication unit he had secretly assembled. "Captain Wilson, this is Marcus. If you can hear me, prepare your people. Cell block security will fail in exactly 40 seconds. Head to Maintenance Bay 4. We're breaking out." In the holding area, Jane's eyes widened at the sound of Marcus's voice coming from a small vent near the floor. Without questioning how he'd managed to create a communication device, she immediately began preparing the crew. "Everyone listen carefully," she whispered urgently. "Be ready to move. Follow my lead and stay together." Exactly 40 seconds later, the energy barriers containing the prisoners flickered and died. The few guards present looked confused, checking their equipment just as the fire alarms began blaring. In the ensuing confusion, Jane led her people out, subduing the guards with swift, coordinated actions. Meanwhile, Marcus and Thomas made their way through service corridors toward the shuttle bay, avoiding the main passageways where Vex troops were responding to the false engine room emergency. "How did you learn to hack Vex systems so quickly?" Thomas asked as they moved. Marcus's expression was focused. "I see patterns. Their technology, their language, their coding. It's all based on mathematical relationships. Once you understand the underlying principles, the applications become obvious." They reached a junction where they would meet the other prisoners, if all went according to plan. Minutes later, Jane appeared, leading the group, her face showing relief at seeing Marcus and Thomas alive. "Green, I don't know how you managed this, but explanations later, Captain." Marcus cut in respectfully. "We need to reach the shuttle bay before they realize what's happening." With Marcus guiding them through the service areas, the human crew moved quickly toward their escape. When they reached the maintenance bay, they found 2 Vex technicians, who were quickly overwhelmed by the determined humans. The shuttle was small, designed for repair work rather than passenger transport, but it would have to do. As the crew boarded, Marcus moved to the control systems, interfacing with the Vex technology as if he'd been flying their ships all his life. "Everyone secure yourselves however you can," he called out. "This won't be a comfortable ride." "Commander?" Dren was in the middle of coordinating the response to the engine room alert when a subordinate rushed in. "Sir, the prisoners are escaping. They've somehow accessed Shuttle Bay 4. Dren's eyes widened. "Lock down all launch systems immediately. Deploy security teams." But he was too late. Marcus had already bypassed the bay door controls and launch sequencers. The small maintenance shuttle burst from the Vex ship, accelerating with a speed that the utility craft shouldn't have been capable of achieving. "Impossible," Dren breathed, watching the sensor readings. "The human has modified the shuttle's propulsion systems in minutes." Aboard the crowded shuttle, the crew of the Compassion held on as Marcus pushed the small vessel to its limits. Thomas made his way to the front, clutching a secure container. "I saved the key research samples," he told Marcus. "If we can reach a human outpost, this knowledge won't be lost." Marcus nodded without taking his eyes off the controls. "We're heading for the Galactic trading hub at Nexus Station. It's neutral territory with representatives from 47 species, including humans. The Vex won't dare attack us there." Jane joined them at the front of the shuttle. "They're pursuing us," she said, looking at the sensor display. 3 fighter craft closing fast." "They won't catch us," Marcus stated with such certainty that neither Jane nor Thomas questioned him. His hands moved across the controls, making adjustments that squeezed impossible performance from the small craft. "I've modified the engines to operate beyond their designed parameters. We'll reach the jump point before they can intercept us." True to his word, the shuttle reached the faster-than-light jump point with the Vex pursuers still too far behind to prevent their escape. As the stars streaked around them, Jane finally asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Marcus, how did you do all this? The communications, the security override, understanding their technology so completely." For a moment, Marcus was silent, his eyes fixed on the swirling patterns of faster-than-light travel. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but clear. "I've always been different, Captain. I see things others don't. Patterns, connections, possibilities. I've hidden my abilities my whole life because I didn't want to be studied or feared or used as a weapon." He turned to face her, his eyes showing a depth of intelligence that was almost unsettling. "But I won't hide anymore. Not when I can help." "And how exactly do you plan to help?" Thomas asked. "We're still just one small group against an entire Vex fleet." Marcus smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. "Dr. Reed, your medical research combined with what I've learned about Vex technology has given me an idea. We're not going to fight the Vex. We're going to change the rules of engagement entirely." As the stolen shuttle raced toward Nexus Station, Marcus began outlining his plan, a plan so audacious yet so precisely calculated that it left even the brilliant Dr. Reed stunned. The humans had escaped, but this was only the beginning of what would become a legendary chapter in galactic history. Nexus Station hung like a glittering jewel against the backdrop of space, its massive ring structure rotating slowly to create artificial gravity. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species docked at its many ports, making it the busiest trading hub in this sector of the galaxy. When the stolen Vex maintenance shuttle arrived, it caused an immediate stir. Station security surrounded the small craft as it docked, weapons ready. They were not expecting the sight that greeted them. 43 humans in medical uniforms, led by a woman with captain's insignia, and a quiet man whose eyes seemed to take in everything at once. "I am Captain Jane Wilson of the UMSS Compassion, a human hospital ship," Jane announced to the security team. "We request emergency asylum and immediate contact with the human diplomatic mission." News of the human medical crew's arrival spread quickly through the station. Within hours, representatives from the Human Diplomatic Corps had arrived, along with officials from the Galactic Council Observer Team, who documented potential violations of interspecies law. In a secure conference room, Jane and Thomas explained what had happened: the unprovoked attack on their hospital ship, the capture of their crew, and their daring escape. "The Vex claim we were developing biological weapons," Jane explained to the gathered representatives. "It's completely false. We're a medical ship on a humanitarian mission." Marcus sat quietly during this meeting, observing the reactions of the various species present. The Vex had no representative at Nexus Station. They considered themselves above the petty dealings of lesser species, but several of their allies shifted uncomfortably at the accusations. When asked about their escape, Jane simply said, "We had help from an exceptional engineer," with a nod toward Marcus. She had agreed to keep the full extent of his abilities confidential for now, understanding that such knowledge could make him a target. After the initial debriefing, Marcus requested a private meeting with the human representatives. In a smaller, secure room, he finally revealed his plan. "The Vex aren't going to stop," he explained to the shocked officials. "They've convinced themselves that Dr. Reed's regenerative medical technology poses an existential threat to their dominance. They'll come with their full fleet, and they'll target any human settlement harboring medical research facilities. We've already sent warnings to all human colonies," one official said, "but our military vessels are scattered. It would take weeks to assemble a defense force capable of standing against a Vex fleet." Marcus smiled slightly. "We don't need weeks, and we don't need to fight them in the traditional sense." He placed a small device on the table. "This contains the complete blueprint for a system that will render Vex weapons temporarily inoperable without harming their crews." The officials stared at him in disbelief. "That's impossible," one finally said. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." "Not anymore," Marcus replied calmly. "During my time on their ship, I identified fundamental flaws in their weapons systems, flaws they've never corrected because no one has ever successfully challenged them. Combined with Dr. Reed's research on cellular regeneration, I've created a countermeasure that targets the living components of their biomechanical systems." For the next 3 days, Marcus worked with human engineers and scientists, refining his design and preparing for what they all knew was coming. Dr. Reed joined him, integrating his medical knowledge with Marcus's technological innovations. On the 4th day, long-range sensors detected a Vex battle fleet approaching Nexus Station. Panic spread through the station as merchants and visitors rushed to evacuate. The few military vessels present prepared defense positions, though everyone knew they stood little chance against the approaching force. In the human section of the station, Marcus made final adjustments to a transmitter array that had been hastily constructed according to his specifications. "Will it work?" Thomas asked, watching Marcus's hands move with precise efficiency over the controls. "It will," Marcus replied with quiet confidence. "But we need to broadcast the evidence of their attack on the Compassion simultaneously. The galaxy needs to witness both their aggression and their vulnerability at the same time." Captain Jane entered the room, her face grim. "The Vex fleet has entered the system. They're demanding we surrender all human personnel, especially you two." She nodded toward Marcus and Thomas. Marcus straightened up from his work. "It's time then. Captain, please ensure the transmission of our ship's log data is ready. Dr. Reed, monitor the biological feedback readings once the system activates." As the Vex fleet approached Nexus Station, their weapons charged and ready, Commander Dren received an unexpected communication request from the human engineer who had escaped his ship. Curiosity overcoming caution, Dren accepted the transmission. Marcus's face appeared on his screen. "Commander," Marcus said respectfully, "there's no need for further violence. Your attack on our hospital ship was based on false intelligence. We were not developing weapons." Dren's expression hardened. "Our intelligence is reliable, human. Your medical technology threatens the established order. Surrender now or we will destroy the station and everyone on it." Marcus shook his head sadly. "I was hoping you would listen to reason." He looked directly into the camera. "I want you to know that what happens next will not harm your crews. Unlike you, we don't target innocent lives." Before Dren could respond, Marcus activated his device. Throughout the Vex fleet, ships suddenly lost weapon functionality. Energy cores fluctuated, targeting systems went offline, and propulsion systems reduced to minimal capacity. The mighty warships drifted in space, momentarily powerless but with life support and communications fully functional. Simultaneously, across all communication channels throughout the galaxy, evidence of the Vex attack on the Compassion began, broadcasting clear footage showing the unprovoked assault on an unarmed hospital ship with clear medical markings. On Nexus Station, Marcus addressed the Galactic Council representatives who had gathered in stunned silence as they witnessed the Vex fleet's sudden vulnerability. "The effect is temporary," he explained. "Their ships will regain full functionality in approximately 12 hours. I designed it this way deliberately. We don't seek to destroy the Vex, only to demonstrate that aggression against peaceful missions will not be tolerated." He turned to Dr. Reed, who activated a second transmission. "This is the complete data on our regenerative medical research. It can benefit all species, including the Vex. It extends life, heals injuries that would be otherwise fatal, and improves quality of life across biological differences." The impact was immediate and far-reaching, as species throughout the galaxy witnessed both the Vex's unprovoked violence and their sudden vulnerability, along with the humans' measured and non-lethal response. Perceptions began to shift dramatically. Within days, the Galactic Council, which had previously been little more than a symbolic body, convened an emergency session. For the first time, representatives from 34 species, including reluctant Vex officials, gathered to establish new protocols for medical and humanitarian missions across all territories. Marcus attended this historic meeting alongside Captain Jane and Dr. Reed. As the discussions proceeded, he spoke rarely, but when he did, the entire assembly fell silent to listen. "Today marks the beginning of a new approach to galactic relations," he said during the closing session. "Not one built on military might or technological superiority, but on our shared need for healing, growth, and understanding. The attack on our hospital ship could have sparked a war. Instead, let it be remembered as the catalyst that united us." The Galactic Medical Cooperative was formed that day, with Dr. Reed appointed as its first human director. The Compassion would be rebuilt, larger and better equipped, becoming the flagship of a new fleet of hospital ships that would serve all species without discrimination. As for Marcus Green, he declined all offers of official positions and honors. Instead, he requested resources to establish an interspecies research center focused on integrating technologies for peaceful purposes. Many wondered about the full extent of his abilities, but he shared his knowledge freely, teaching others rather than hoarding his insights. Years later, when the first Vex patients were treated aboard the new Compassion, Commander Dren was among them. His once hostile eyes now filled with grudging respect as he watched humans and Vex medical staff working side by side. "I never understood," he admitted to Marcus, who occasionally consulted at the hospital ship. "We thought power came from keeping others weak. You showed us that true strength comes from helping others become strong." Marcus smiled, the same quiet smile that had once confused his crewmates aboard the original Compassion. "That's the most human insight of all, Commander. We're at our best not when we stand alone, but when we help others stand with us." As Marcus walked the corridors of the new hospital ship, passing medical staff from a dozen different species, he reflected on how a single act of aggression had inadvertently changed everything. The attack on a human hospital ship had awakened not just his own hidden potential, but humanity's greatest strength, the ability to turn adversity into opportunity and enemies into allies. The unstoppable genius had changed galactic history, not through domination but through understanding. And that would be his most lasting legacy. The morning shift began like any other on Unity Station. The massive structure floated in neutral space, a symbol of cooperation between 47 different species. Inside the Grand Council chambers, representatives gathered in their usual spots. Some attended through holographic projections, their forms flickering slightly as quantum signals traveled across the galaxy. Others sat physically present, their varied anatomies accommodated by specialized seating designed for everything from the gelatinous vortex to the crystalline shen. Ambassador Zixthar stood at the central podium, his forearms gesturing expressively as he discussed trade agreements. The Vrelny diplomat had a reputation for lengthy speeches, and today was no exception. He droned on about mineral rights in the Kess Nebula, while several representatives quietly worked on their data tablets, only half listening. In the monitoring station 3 levels below, junior analyst Creoth sat surrounded by holographic displays. Her job was simple but important: track all communication traffic across the galactic network and flag any unusual patterns. The young Threen had held this position for only 6 months, and she took her duties seriously, even when they seemed boring. That morning, something caught her attention. A small red indicator appeared on one of her screens, then another. Then 12 more. Within minutes, hundreds of red dots spread across her display like a disease. Each one represented a communication hub that had gone silent. Creoth felt her secondary heart skip a beat. She expanded the view, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. The pattern became clear. Every single red indicator corresponded to a human outpost, colony, or station. She checked the timestamps. All of them had gone dark within the same 6-hour window. She immediately contacted her supervisor, a grizzled Poltrax named Venro who had worked in communications for 30 years. Probably just a solar storm, Venro said, barely looking up from his own work. Happens all the time in the outer sectors. But sir, it's not just one sector. It's all of them. Every human facility across the entire galaxy went dark at almost the same time. Venro's expression shifted. He moved to her station and studied the displays. His face, normally a calm blue, began shifting toward concerned purple. "Send a priority message to the council," he said quietly. "This isn't normal." Within an hour, the council chambers buzzed with confusion. Council Director Velmara, a tall Xanthari with silver skin that reflected the chamber lights, called for order. Her voice, amplified by the room's acoustic systems, cut through the noise. "Representatives, please. We have received reports that human communication networks have experienced widespread failure. We are investigating the cause and will provide updates as information becomes available." Ambassador Zixthar's diplomatic voice boomed through the chamber. "Director, with respect, the humans control 23% of all major trade routes. If their systems are down, we need more than investigations. We need solutions." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Kryn representative, a warrior species known for their aggressive stance on most issues, stood from his seat. "I move that we send military vessels to human territories immediately. This could be an attack. If hostile forces have struck human positions, they may target others next." The motion carried quickly. Within hours, ships from a dozen species departed for human space. The first reports came back within 2 days, and they made no sense. Captain Tholvar of the Kryn warship Retribution arrived at the human colony of New Terra Prime, a thriving settlement of 200,000 people on a lush green world. His tactical team expected to find destruction, signs of battle, perhaps evidence of the mysterious void entities that haunted the galaxy's dark corners. Instead, they found everything working perfectly. The colony's fusion reactors hummed with power, streetlights illuminated empty roads, automated agricultural systems continued their cycles, tending to crops that would never be harvested. In the residential sectors, doors stood open. Food sat on tables, some of it still warm. In one home, a child's toy hovered in midair, held by an anti-gravity field that had never been switched off. But there were no bodies. No signs of struggle. No blood, no weapons discharge marks, no indication of any violence whatsoever. The humans had simply vanished. It's like they stepped out for a moment and never came back, Thulvar reported to Unity Station. Everything is here except the people. Similar reports flooded in from every location. The human trading station at Crossroads Junction still had ships docked, their cargo holds full of goods ready for distribution. The human research facility on Titan's moon showed experiments in progress, data still recording, but the scientists were gone. The massive human shipyards at Proxima Centauri had 3 destroyers in various stages of construction, robotic assembly arms frozen in place waiting for instructions that would never come. Earth itself presented the strangest picture. The birth world of humanity glowed with lights visible from orbit. Its cities functioned on automated systems. The massive orbital platforms that controlled weather and managed space traffic continued their tasks flawlessly. But on the surface, in the cities and towns and villages, there was no one home. Velmara stood in her private office, staring at the reports that continued to pile up. Nothing about this made sense. Mass evacuations didn't happen silently. Species didn't just disappear. There should be records, communications, some indication of what happened. She called for her best investigator, a Poltrax named Threnvol who specialized in xenoarchaeology and ancient mysteries. If anyone could make sense of this, it would be him. Threnvol arrived within hours, his purple skin showing the dark patterns that indicated deep thought. He had already begun his research. Director, I've reviewed the data. This wasn't sudden. The humans planned this? Planned what? Mass suicide? Spontaneous ascension? What could make an entire species abandon everything they built? Threnvol activated a holographic display. Look at the pattern of their disappearance. The outer colonies went first, then the mid-range settlements, then the core worlds. It was a coordinated withdrawal, moving inward toward Earth and then from Earth to somewhere else, but why? And where did they go? I don't know yet. But I found something in the communication logs. The humans sent encrypted messages to each other for months before this happened. Very subtle, hidden in routine transmissions. They knew this was coming. Velmara felt a chill run through her body. Show me. The hologram displayed a timeline. Months of tiny encrypted data packets too small to trigger security alerts, bouncing between human facilities. Threnvol had managed to decrypt a few of them. Most are still locked, but the ones I can read mention something called the Great Gathering. They reference coordinates, but not in any format we use. And there's this phrase that keeps appearing. The experiment is complete. What experiment? Unknown. But Director, there's something else. In the final hours before they vanished, every human facility received the same broadcast. It was encrypted, but I managed to crack it. You need to hear this, Threnvol played the audio. A human voice, calm and filled with what sounded like joy, spoke in their language. The translation software rendered it to Galactic standard. Brothers and sisters, the time has come. The long forgetting is over. We remember now. We remember who we were, what we built, and why we chose to forget. The experiment is complete. We have relearned empathy, struggle, growth, and humility. It is time to go home. Leave everything as it stands. Let it serve as a monument to what we rediscovered here. To all those we lived among, farewell. Perhaps one day you will understand. The cradle awaits us. The message ended. Silence filled Velmara's office. What does it mean? She asked quietly. I have a theory, Threnvol said, his voice uncertain. But you won't like it. Tell me, what if the humans weren't really newcomers to the galaxy? What if they were here long before any of us? Velmara wanted to dismiss the idea immediately, but something stopped her. She thought about humanity's strange technologies, their unusual resistance to quantum displacement, their odd genetic structure that seemed both primitive and impossibly complex. Continue your investigation, she ordered. Use any resources you need. I want answers. As Threnvol left, Velmara moved to her office window. Unity Station orbited a small moon, and from this angle she could see Earth in the distance. That blue and green world glowed with life, its cities shining like jewels against the darkness. But now it was a tomb, a beautiful empty shell of a civilization that had simply walked away. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to feel the absence. Human merchant vessels had carried 40% of all trade goods between the outer rim and the core worlds. Without them, supply chains collapsed. Colonies that depended on human shipments of medicine and food found themselves in crisis. The quantum communication relays, mostly maintained by human engineers, began failing one by one. The network that connected the galaxy started developing gaps. Messages that once took seconds now took hours or simply never arrived. Most critically, the border territories near the void zones reported increased activity. Raiders and hostile entities that had been held back by human peacekeeping forces now pushed forward unchecked. 3 colonies fell within the first month, their populations enslaved or killed. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. Anger and fear filled the chambers. "This is an act of war," the Kryn representative shouted. "The humans abandoned us deliberately, knowing what would happen." "Or they fled from something," another voice called out. "What if something scared them so badly they ran?" "Then what hope do we have?" a small species representative asked, their voice trembling. Velmara struggled to maintain order. The galaxy was coming apart at the seams, and she had no answers to give them. The humans had left behind functioning technology, infrastructure, and resources, but without the knowledge of how to maintain or repair them, everything would eventually fail. As the session descended into chaos, Kreoth appeared at Velmara's side with a data tablet. "Director, we just detected something. A signal from Earth. It's been broadcasting on a loop for weeks, but we only just noticed it. It's hidden in background radiation." Velmara took the tablet. The message was simple. Just a set of coordinates and a single word in human language. "Cradle." She looked at Kreoth. "Send these coordinates to Threnvol. Tell him to find out what's there." "Director, these coordinates point to a region marked as impassable on all our charts. The dead zones. No ship that has gone there in the last 1,000 years has returned." "Then maybe," Velmara said quietly. "The humans knew something we don't. Maybe they've always known." The truth was beginning to dawn on her, terrible and humbling. The galaxy hadn't been teaching humanity. Humanity had been teaching them. And now class was over. Threnvol stood in the archives beneath Unity Station, surrounded by data crystals containing thousands of years of galactic history. The lights were dim, and he preferred it that way. The darkness helped him think. For 3 weeks he had lived in these archives, barely sleeping, eating only when his assistant forced food into his hands. The mystery of the human disappearance consumed him. Every piece of evidence he uncovered only led to more questions, each more disturbing than the last. The galactic economy was collapsing. That was the simple truth no one wanted to say aloud. Without human trade vessels, entire sectors faced starvation. The Peltrax colony of Harmony 7 had lost 80,000 people to famine before relief ships finally arrived. The Xanthari mining operations in the Kess Nebula had ground to a halt because human-designed drilling equipment kept breaking down, and no one knew how to fix it properly. The quantum relay network was failing faster than anyone predicted. Communication between the core worlds and the outer rim now took days instead of seconds. Some colonies were completely cut off, their calls for help lost in the void. 3 more border settlements had fallen to raiders from the void zones, and without human peacekeepers, no one seemed able or willing to stop them. In the council chambers above, representatives shouted at each other daily. The Kryn hegemony demanded military action against humanity, though no one could explain how you attack a species that had vanished. The soft-scale coalition wanted to colonize abandoned human territories and claim their technology. Smaller species that had depended on human protection begged for help that no one could provide. But Threnvol ignored the politics. He focused on the past. The human archives on Earth had been left unlocked, a gift or perhaps a test. Threnvol had spent weeks digging through their records, learning more about humanity than he had ever imagined. What he found disturbed him deeply. Humans had arrived in the galaxy only 3,000 years ago. They appeared suddenly with colony ships emerging from unknown space, claiming to be refugees from a distant galaxy. The council of that era had been skeptical, but eventually granted them settlement rights in empty sectors. The humans were grateful, humble, and eager to integrate, but that story was a lie. Threnvol had found older records, buried deep in Earth's geological data. Human cities existed on Earth going back 300,000 years, not primitive settlements, advanced cities with technology. They had simply been abandoned at some point, left to be reclaimed by nature, and then reoccupied by humans who seemed to have forgotten their own past. Even stranger, he found references in the oldest human mythology to the time before, when humans lived among the stars and built wonders that touched the heavens. Every human culture had similar stories, tales of a golden age, a fall, and a long darkness before they climbed back to the stars. Threnvol had dismissed it as mythology until he found the genetic records. Human DNA was wrong. Not alien, not diseased, but deliberately modified. Buried in their genetic code were sequences that shouldn't exist, markers that indicated intentional engineering on a massive scale. Whole sections of their DNA were locked, dormant, waiting for some trigger to activate them. He had seen these markers before years ago, during an expedition to the Dead Zones. Ancient artifacts found in those forbidden regions carried genetic samples, fragments of organic material preserved for millions of years. At the time, no one could identify the species. The DNA was too complex, too advanced, too different from anything in the Galactic database. Now, comparing those ancient samples to human DNA, Threnvol felt his blood run cold. They matched. Not perfectly. The human DNA was simpler, reduced somehow, but the core structure was identical. Humans weren't a young species. They were ancient, perhaps the oldest species in the galaxy. He found more evidence in human personal logs and diaries, documents never meant for alien eyes. Humans had been having strange dreams for decades before their departure, dreams of vast cities between stars, of technologies that bent space and time, of a home they couldn't quite remember but desperately missed. One diary, written by a human scientist named Sarah Chen, described her experience. The dream started 3 months ago. Every night I see the cradle. I don't know how I know that name, but I do. It's home. It's where we came from, where we were meant to be, and I remember now, we chose to forget. We chose to be small again, to be limited, to struggle and grow. The experiment is almost complete. Soon we can go home. Threnvol found thousands of similar accounts, humans across the galaxy experiencing the same phenomenon, a remembering of something they had never known they forgot. Then he found the coordinates. Hidden in Earth's oldest digital archives, protected by encryption so advanced it had taken him weeks to crack, were star charts. Not human star charts, these predated human civilization by millions of years. They showed the galaxy as it looked long before any current species existed. When stars were in different positions and whole, sectors had different names. The charts marked one region with a symbol that human translation software rendered as origin or cradle or sometimes simply home. The region was now called the Dead Zones, a vast area of space surrounded by strange radiation and gravitational anomalies that made travel impossible. Ships that tried to enter never returned. Probes sent into that region simply stopped transmitting. The galactic community had avoided the Dead Zones for thousands of years, treating them as natural hazards. But these ancient charts showed something different. The radiation and anomalies weren't natural. They were artificial, a barrier created by technology so advanced it appeared to be a force of nature. The Dead Zones weren't keeping people out. They were protecting something inside. Threnvol presented his findings to Director Velmara in her private office. He had prepared for disbelief, for dismissal, for accusations of wild speculation. Instead, Velmara listened in silence, her silver face growing darker as he spoke. "You're saying humanity built this galaxy," she said when he finished, "that every species alive today exists in a civilization that humans created millions of years ago, then abandoned. Not abandoned, reset. They did something to themselves, Director. They deliberately reduced their own species, scattered themselves across the galaxy with false memories, and let themselves forget everything they once were. Earth wasn't a colony, it was a laboratory. Humanity spent 300,000 years rediscovering fire, inventing the wheel, learning to fly, all while carrying dormant memories of technologies that could reshape reality. But why? Why would any species do that to themselves?" Threnvol pulled up one more document, the last thing he had discovered. It was a message recorded by a human named James Morrison and hidden in Earth's deepest digital vaults. The video showed an elderly man with kind eyes, sitting in a room filled with strange equipment. "If you're watching this, then the experiment succeeded," Morrison said. "We remembered. I'm recording this before the reset, before we give up everything we know and become small again. Future generations will think I'm insane. They'll think this is fiction. But you, whoever finds this after we remember, you need to understand why we did this. We became gods. We built wonders that spanned galaxies. We had everything: immortality, unlimited power, perfect knowledge. And we were miserable. We forgot what it meant to struggle, to hope, to dream of better days. We forgot empathy because we never needed help. We forgot love because we never faced loss. We forgot the value of life because death no longer existed. So we chose to forget everything. We decided to be human again in the oldest sense of the word. Mortal, limited, small. We wanted to remember what it felt like to be helpless and scared and hopeful. We wanted to learn those lessons again, properly this time. The experiment takes 300,000 years. At the end, if we succeeded, we'll remember. We'll remember what we learned from being small, and then we can go home back to the cradle, back to our true civilization. But this time we'll be better. We'll be whole. If you're from one of the younger species watching this, know that we're sorry for leaving so suddenly. We taught you what we could. We protected you when possible. But we couldn't stay. The remembering can't be stopped, and once it starts, we have to go home. The cradle calls to us. We hope you'll forgive us. More importantly, we hope you'll learn from what we left behind. Not our technology, that's just tools. Learn our true lesson. Power means nothing without wisdom, and wisdom comes from humility. Be better than we were the first time. Be worthy of the galaxy we built for you. The message ended. Velmara sat in silence for a long moment. We treated them like primitive newcomers, she said quietly. We mocked their caution. We demanded they share their technology. We voted against their proposals because we thought they didn't understand galactic politics. She looked at Threnvol. They were our parents, and we treated them like children. There's more, Director. Something worse. Worse than discovering we've been living in our own creator's sandbox. Threnvol pulled up another file, his hands trembling slightly. Remember the Doomsday Project? The quantum destabilization weapon the Council secretly authorized 20 years ago? Velmara's face went pale. Few people knew about that project. The Council had commissioned it as a final defense against the void entities, a weapon so powerful it could destroy entire sectors of space. The weapon had been built using modified human quantum technology, reverse-engineered from devices humans had shared for peaceful purposes. What about it? It's not working correctly. Human scientists were part of the project initially, but they withdrew 15 years ago, claiming the design was too dangerous. The Council continued without them, using their partial blueprints. The weapon was supposed to be stable, dormant until activated. Supposed to be? It's not stable, Director. The quantum matrices are degrading. In 78 days, it will reach critical mass and detonate automatically. The explosion will destroy everything within 2,000 light-years. That includes 23 major inhabited worlds and hundreds of colonies, approximately 40 billion lives. Velmara stood so quickly her chair crashed backward. Why wasn't I informed? The project directors only realized the problem 3 days ago. They've been trying to fix it, but every attempt makes it worse. The truth is, the humans deliberately left the design incomplete. They knew someone would try to weaponize their technology, so they left out crucial information. Only they know how to make it safe. Can we destroy it? Any attempt to destroy it will trigger immediate detonation. We can't move it, it's too unstable. We can't disarm it. We don't understand the technology well enough. Our only option is to find someone who knows how to fix it. The humans. Yes, Director. We need to find them. We need to ask for their help, and we need to do it in 78 days or less. Velmara moved to her window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity lived in their true form, in their ancient civilization. Probably glad to be rid of the younger species, who had treated them so poorly. We mocked them when they warned us not to weaponize their technology, she said. We called them paranoid. We accused them of hoarding power, and now we need them to save us from our own arrogance. There's a word the humans used sometimes, Threnvol said. Irony. I understand that word now, Velmara replied. Prepare a ship. We're going to the dead zones. Director, nothing that goes there comes back. Then I suppose we'll find out if the humans still care enough to let us through. The emergency session of the Galactic Council turned into chaos within minutes of Velmara's announcement. Representatives shouted over each other, their voices creating a cacophony of anger, fear, and denial that echoed through the massive chambers. This is absurd, Ambassador Zixthar bellowed, his forearms gesturing wildly. You expect us to believe that humans, those primitive, emotional creatures who only joined us 3,000 years ago, are actually ancient gods who built the galaxy? I expect you to look at the evidence, Velmara replied, her voice cold and steady, which I have made available to all of you. Read it, study it, Then tell me I'm wrong. The Kryn representative, Commander Zelkar, slammed his fist on his podium. Evidence can be faked. This is human manipulation, a trick to make us dependent on them so they can return as our masters. I say we should declare humanity hostile and prepare for war. War against what? A small voice called out. It was Representative Miri of the Pelith, a tiny species known for their logic and careful thinking. Commander, the humans are gone. They left peacefully. They didn't take anything except themselves. If they wanted to rule us, why would they leave? It's a test, Zelkar insisted. They want to see how we react to measure our weakness. When we're at our lowest, they'll return with demands. Or, Threnval said, standing to address the assembly, they left because they remembered they didn't belong here anymore. They remembered who they were and they went home. Just like the evidence shows. I don't care about your evidence. The soft-scale representative rose, her scales shifting through angry shades of red. What I care about is that 17 of my species' colonies are on the verge of collapse because human supply chains disappeared. We have children starving, old ones dying from treatable diseases because human medicine isn't arriving. Whether they're gods or primitives doesn't matter. They abandoned us and people are dying. A rumble of agreement moved through the chamber. This was the truth that united them all. Whatever humanity had been, whatever they were now, their departure had caused a crisis that threatened to tear galactic civilization apart. Velmara let them shout for a while, let them vent their anger and fear. Then she activated the chamber's priority override, a feature reserved for only the most critical announcements. All other sounds cut off instantly. Representatives, she said quietly, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. 75 days from now, approximately 40 billion people will die. The quantum doomsday weapon we built using human technology is going to explode. We cannot stop it. We cannot destroy it. We cannot escape it. The only beings in the galaxy who might be able to save us are the humans, and we have no way to contact them. The silence that followed was absolute. I am taking a ship into the dead zones. Velmara continued. I will find the humans and I will ask, not demand, not order, but ask for their help. While I am gone, I suggest you all spend time reviewing how we treated humanity during their time among us. Read the proposals they made that we rejected. Study the warnings they gave that we ignored. Look at the technology they shared and the technology they refused to share, and ask yourselves why. She stepped down from the director's podium and walked toward the exit. Behind her, the chamber remained silent. The journey to the dead zones took 6 days, and Velmara used every moment to prepare. She reviewed decades of council records, reading through old session transcripts with new eyes. What she found made her increasingly ashamed. 47 years ago, humans proposed new safety standards for quantum drive technology. They showed data proving that current drives had a 0.003% chance of catastrophic failure. The council voted against the proposal, calling it unnecessarily expensive and overcautious. 3 years later, the passenger liner Bright Hope suffered quantum drive failure. 16,000 people died instantly. The humans had been right. 32 years ago, humans warned against colonizing Sector 88J. They provided extensive sensor data showing unusual subspace readings that indicated danger. The council dismissed their concerns as paranoid and approved colonization. The Vrelny established a colony of 50,000. 2 years later, the entire colony vanished overnight, just like the humans would later vanish, except the Vrelny left behind bodies twisted in agony and buildings melted like wax. Whatever killed them had been sleeping in that sector, and the colonists woke it up. The humans had warned them. 27 years ago, humans voted against expansion into the dead zones, stating that some places are forbidden for good reasons. The Kryn called them cowards and accused them of hiding resources. The motion passed without human support. The Kryn sent an expedition fleet of 40 warships into the dead zones. None returned. Not one signal, not one distress call, nothing. They simply disappeared beyond the barrier. The humans had tried to protect them. The list went on and on. Every major disaster of the past 50 years humans had warned about. Every dangerous proposal they had voted against. Every reckless venture they had counseled caution, and the council had dismissed them every single time. We called them cowards, Velmara said aloud to her empty cabin. We said they didn't understand the realities of galactic politics. We accused them of trying to control us through fear. Kreoth, who had joined the mission as communications officer, appeared at her doorway. "Director, I've been reviewing the records too. I found something interesting. Want to know how many times humans used their veto power in the council? How many? 3 times in 3,000 years. 3. And each time it was to prevent actions that would have caused massive loss of life. The rest of the time, even when we ignored their warnings, even when we voted against their proposals, they simply accepted it and moved on. They were patient with us," Velmara said, "like parents watching children make mistakes, knowing the children need to learn but hoping they won't hurt themselves too badly." The ship shuddered slightly as they approached the edge of the dead zones. Through the viewport, Velmara could see the barrier, a shimmering wall of energy that looked like reality itself was breaking down. Colors that shouldn't exist flickered across its surface. Space seemed to fold and twist in impossible ways. "Sensors are going crazy," Captain Zelnor reported from the bridge. The old Poltrax military officer had volunteered for this mission despite his retirement. He had served alongside humans during his career and respected them deeply. Radiation levels off the scale, gravitational anomalies everywhere, and something that's reading as both matter and energy simultaneously. "This is why ships don't come back, Director. This barrier will tear us apart." "Then we send a message first," Velmara said. "Broadcast on all frequencies, every language, including human languages. Tell them who we are and why we've come." The message was simple. "We are from the Galactic Council. We come seeking humanity's help. We have learned our mistake. Please, if you can hear us, please respond." They waited. Seconds turned into minutes. The ship drifted closer to the barrier, and Velmara could feel the hull beginning to strain under the impossible physics. "Director, we need to turn back," Zelnor urged. "The ship can't take much more of this." "Wait," Velmara insisted. "Just a little longer." Then suddenly the barrier changed. A section of it began to clear like clouds parting. A corridor opened in the chaos, a path of normal space leading into the dead zones. "It's an invitation," Dr. Yivsha said softly. The physicist had spent her entire career studying human technology, and was the only reason they had any understanding of the doomsday weapon at all. "They're letting us through, or leading us to our deaths," Jelkar muttered. The Kryn commander had insisted on joining the mission, though Velmara suspected it was more to ensure she didn't make secret deals with humanity than out of any desire to help. "Then we die learning the truth," Velmara said. "Captain, take us through." The ship moved forward, entering the corridor. Behind them, the barrier closed, cutting them off from the rest of the galaxy. There was no turning back now. Inside the dead zone, space was different. Stars shone with colors that seemed wrong, and nebulae moved in ways that defied physics. In the distance, structures became visible, massive constructs that dwarfed anything the Galactic Council had ever built. "Sensors reading multiple Dyson spheres," Zelnor reported, his voice shaking slightly. "Energy outputs that exceed our entire civilization by factors of millions. Structures moving between stars. Director, this is what humanity actually is," Velmara finished. "This is what they gave up to become small again." As they traveled deeper, they passed more wonders. A ring world spinning around a star, its surface area exceeding that of 1,000,000 planets. Stellar engines moving stars themselves, rearranging solar systems like furniture. Massive ships the size of moons, their purposes unknown but their power undeniable. "Why would anyone give this up?" Kreoth whispered. "Because they had everything except what mattered," Threnval said. "Read Morrison's message again. They had power but lost their souls. They became something less than alive in their pursuit of being more than mortal." A voice suddenly came through their communication system, speaking in perfect galactic standard but with a warmth that no translation software could ever capture. "Welcome to the cradle. We've been expecting you. Maintain your current course. You will be guided to the assembly." The ship moved forward, now clearly under external control but gently, respectfully. They passed through a stellar nursery where baby stars were being born under careful management. They flew past a structure so large it defied comprehension, a planet-sized sphere of interlocking rings and platforms that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in some other dimension. Finally, they approached a station that, while enormous, seemed designed to be welcoming rather than intimidating. Lights guided them to a docking port perfectly sized for their ship. "Atmospheric readings show breathable air for all our species," Yivsha reported. "They prepared for us." They disembarked into a beautiful garden, an impossible green space floating in the void between stars. At the garden center, a woman waited. She appeared human, elderly, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. But Velmara could sense something vast behind that simple appearance, like looking at an ocean and seeing only the surface while knowing infinite depths lurked below. "Welcome," the woman said. "I am the coordinator, the voice of humanity's collective consciousness. We are one now as we were before the forgetting. Please sit. Rest. You have traveled far and carry heavy burdens." Velmara found herself sitting on a bench that seemed to grow from the ground itself. The others joined her, even Jelkar, who looked uncharacteristically humble. "You came seeking help," the coordinator said. "The weapon you built is unstable. 73 days remain before it destroys 40 billion lives. You want us to fix it?" "Yes," Velmara said simply. "We were wrong. About everything. We didn't listen to your warnings. We didn't respect your wisdom. We treated you as inferior when you were our superiors in every way. And now we're paying for that arrogance. But the price shouldn't be 40 billion innocent lives." The coordinator smiled sadly. "We left you the pieces to solve this yourself." Every human scientist who worked on that project kept detailed notes. The solution is in those notes if you look carefully enough. But we knew you might not find it in time. We knew you might come here. "This was another test," Threnvol said quietly. "Everything is a test," the coordinator replied. "Life itself is a test. We tested ourselves for 300,000 years. Now we're testing you." "Testing us how?" Velmara asked. The coordinator's expression became serious. "Testing whether you learned anything from our time among you. Whether you can admit when you're wrong. Whether you can ask for help instead of demanding it. Whether you value life more than pride." She paused. "You passed the first test by coming here with humility. But there is one more test to face. You must tell me, what have you learned?" Velmara sat in the impossible garden, surrounded by her team, facing the woman who was and wasn't just a woman. The coordinator waited patiently, her kind eyes reflecting starlight from suns that shouldn't be visible from this location. Time seemed to move strangely here, like they existed in a bubble separate from normal reality. "What have we learned?" Velmara repeated the question softly. She had been preparing for this moment since leaving Unity Station, rehearsing speeches and arguments. Now faced with the reality of humanity's true nature, all her prepared words seemed hollow. "I thought I knew," she began. "I thought I could list our mistakes, acknowledge our failures, and that would be enough. But sitting here in this place you built, seeing what you gave up to live among us as equals rather than masters, I understand that the lesson isn't just about admitting we were wrong." She stood and walked to the edge of the garden, looking out at the megastructures floating in the distance. A Dyson sphere pulsed with energy that could power 1,000 civilizations. A stellar engine moved a star slowly, patiently, toward some destination only humanity could comprehend. This was power beyond imagination, and they had walked away from it. "You could have ruled us," Velmara said. "When you returned to the galaxy 3,000 years ago, you could have arrived as gods. We would have had no choice but to bow. Instead, you arrived as refugees asking permission to settle in empty sectors. You made yourselves small on purpose." "We did," the coordinator agreed. "But why do you think we chose that path?" "Because you wanted to teach us something. You wanted us to learn to value wisdom over power, cooperation over domination." Velmara turned back to face the coordinator. "But we failed that lesson, didn't we? We saw your patience as weakness. We mistook your humility for ignorance. We treated your warnings as fear rather than wisdom." "You did all those things," the coordinator said. "But you also did other things. Tell me about those." Velmara thought back through human history in the galaxy. It wasn't all conflict and dismissal. There were moments of genuine cooperation, times when the Council and humanity worked together beautifully. "The Peleth Plague," Kreoth spoke up suddenly. 30 years ago, it was killing the Peleth by the millions. Human doctors worked day and night for months to find a cure. They saved my people. My grandmother was one of those they saved. "The Zenthari crystal crisis," Velmara added. "When our homeworld's crystal forests began dying, threatening our entire species' reproduction cycle, human botanists identified the problem and helped us fix it. They asked for nothing in return. Human merchants often traded at loss in poor sectors," Captain Zelnor said. "I saw it personally. They would bring essential supplies to colonies that couldn't pay market prices and accept whatever the colonists could afford. When I asked a human captain why, he said, "Because they need it more than we need profit." The coordinator smiled. "You see? It wasn't all failure. You learned compassion from us even if you didn't realize you were learning. You learned that power exists to serve, not to dominate. Some of you learned these lessons better than others. But not enough of us," Threnval said. "Not the ones who made the decisions. We saw your compassion and called it weakness. We saw your restraint and called it cowardice. And now?" the coordinator asked. "What do you call it now?" "Wisdom," Velmara said firmly. "Strength we didn't have the maturity to recognize. You were trying to teach us how to be better, and we were too arrogant to learn." The coordinator stood and walked among them, her presence comforting despite the vast intelligence they could sense behind her eyes. "Do you know what the hardest part of the experiment was? Watching you make mistakes we could have prevented, seeing you suffer when we could have helped, biting our tongues when we wanted to scream at you to listen. But you stayed silent," Dr. Yevsha said. "You let us make our mistakes, we did, because that's what love demands sometimes. Real love, the kind that wants the best for someone, means letting them fall so they can learn to stand. We couldn't baby you forever. At some point, every species must mature on its own. Even if that means they build weapons that might destroy them?" Commander Jelkar asked, speaking for the first time since they'd arrived. The proud Kryn warrior looked smaller somehow, humbled by the reality of humanity's true power. "Especially then," the coordinator replied. "You needed to learn that some knowledge is dangerous, that some power shouldn't be pursued, that restraint is more important than capability. We told you these things, but you wouldn't listen. So we left clues in the weapon's design. We made it incomplete on purpose. If you had been wise, you would have stopped trying to fix it and simply abandoned the project. But if you were still learning, still growing, you would come here and ask for help." "And if we hadn't come?" Velmara asked. "If we'd been too proud to admit we needed help." The coordinator's expression grew sad. "Then 40 billion people would die and you would learn a terrible lesson about the cost of pride. We hoped it wouldn't come to that. We believed in you enough to think you'd set aside your arrogance when billions of lives hung in the balance. Some of us still didn't want to come," Jelkar admitted. "Some of us wanted to keep trying to solve it ourselves or to find some other solution. I myself argued that coming here showed weakness." "And yet you came anyway," the coordinator observed. "Why?" Jelkar was silent for a long moment. "Because Director Velmara asked a question I couldn't answer. She asked, 'If your pride costs 40 billion lives, how will you live with yourself?' I realized I couldn't answer that. No amount of pride is worth that cost. That," the coordinator said gently, "is wisdom. Perhaps the beginning of it anyway." She gestured and suddenly the garden shifted. They found themselves standing on a platform overlooking a vast chamber. Below them, millions of humans moved through what looked like a city built of light and thought. But these weren't the humans they had known. These were beings of pure consciousness, their forms shifting and changing, connected to each other in ways that defied description. "This is humanity now," the coordinator explained. "We remembered everything, our true forms, our capabilities, our history spanning millions of years. We rejoined our collective consciousness, becoming one again while retaining our individuality. It's beautiful and terrible, powerful and lonely." "Lonely?" Kreoth asked. "You have each other. We do. But we don't have you. We spent 300,000 years living as individuals, forming friendships with beings who weren't part of our collective. We fell in love with aliens. We had children with other species. We learned to appreciate perspectives different from our own. That was the point of the experiment, to remember how to connect with others truly, deeply, not just with those who think like us." The scene shifted again, showing memories. Humans laughing with Pelith friends over shared meals. Human and Zenthari children playing together in parks. A human woman holding her half-Vrelny baby, tears of joy streaming down her face. A human soldier dying in a Poltrax warrior's arms, both of them knowing they'd fought together as brothers. "We learned what we'd lost when we became gods," the coordinator said softly. "We learned why being small matters. We learned that vulnerability creates connection, that limitation creates appreciation, that mortality creates meaning." Velmara felt tears running down her silver face. "And then we treated you as inferior. We dismissed you as primitive. We failed to see the gift you were giving us." "Not all of you failed," the coordinator reminded her. "Many of you saw. Many of you learned. Those friendships, those connections, those lessons, they weren't wasted. They're why we're having this conversation instead of watching you destroy yourselves. The scene shifted one final time, showing the doomsday weapon. It hung in space, pulsing with unstable energy, counting down to catastrophe. Around it, scientists from a dozen species worked desperately, trying to understand technology they lacked the framework to comprehend. "They're so close," Dr. Yivsha said, studying the scene. "If they just adjusted the quantum harmonics instead of trying to stabilize the matrix directly, they don't have the mathematical framework to understand quantum harmonics the way humans do," the coordinator said. "It took us 10,000 years to develop that framework. They're trying to run before they can walk. So we need your help," Velmara said. "We're asking for your help, not demanding it, not expecting it, but asking with all humility. Will you save those 40 billion lives?" The coordinator looked at each of them in turn. "Humanity is debating your request right now. All of us, every consciousness in the collective, discussing what to do. Some say you need to learn this lesson the hard way. Some say we should save you and let you continue growing. Some say we should save you but demand changes to your civilization. The debate has been raging since you entered the dead zones." "How long will the debate take?" Captain Zelnor asked. "We've been debating for 6 days, though only hours have passed for you here. Time moves differently in the cradle. We'll have an answer soon." "And if the answer's no?" Jelkar asked. "Then we'll give you complete access to all relevant technology and hope you can learn fast enough," the coordinator said. "We won't let you die for your mistakes, but we also can't keep rescuing you from every danger. At some point you need to stand on your own." "We understand," Velmara said. "Whatever your answer, we thank you for listening. We thank you for the time you spent among us, teaching us even when we refused to learn, and we apologize for failing to appreciate what you were trying to give us." The coordinator smiled warmly. That apology, that humility, that willingness to admit fault, these are why the debate in the collective is leaning toward helping you. Not because you deserve it, but because you've shown you can grow. You came here not with weapons or demands, but with requests and acknowledgement of your limitations. That's new for you. It's new for our entire civilization, Threnval admitted. For thousands of years, the Council has operated on the assumption that we are the pinnacle of galactic development. We never imagined there were species older, wiser, more powerful than us. We certainly never imagined we were living in a galaxy they built. "And now that you know?" the coordinator asked. "Now," Velmara said firmly, "we have a choice. We can be humbled and resentful, bitter about learning we're not as special as we thought. Or we can be humbled and grateful, appreciative that we have teachers who care enough to let us learn at our own pace." "I choose gratitude." "I choose the same," Krioth said. One by one, the others voiced their agreement. Even Jelkar, after a long pause, nodded. "We choose to learn," Velmara said. "We choose to grow. We choose to be worthy of the galaxy you built for us. Whatever form that takes, however long it requires, we choose to be better." The coordinator's smile widened. The collective has reached a decision. The coordinator stood silent for a moment, her eyes distant as if listening to voices only she could hear. In a way, she was. The collective consciousness of billions of human minds, all debating, discussing, arguing the fate of the younger species who had come seeking help. "The decision is made," she said finally. "We will help you. But first you must understand what this means." The garden shifted around them once more, and they found themselves standing in what appeared to be a vast auditorium. But instead of seats, there were points of light, billions of them, each one a human consciousness. The light swirled and danced, forming patterns that represented complex thoughts and emotions beyond what individual minds could comprehend. "Humanity is not unanimous," the coordinator explained. "We are one, but we retain our individuality, our different perspectives. 3 billion of us believe you should face the consequences of your actions. They argue that true growth comes from facing failure, that preventing the catastrophe robs you of an essential lesson." Velmara felt her heart sink. 3 billion. That was more humans than many species had in their entire population. 5 billion. Believe we should save you but demand significant changes to your civilization, the coordinator continued. They want oversight, monitoring, controls to prevent future mistakes. They believe you need guardians, not teachers. "And the rest?" Velmara asked quietly. 7 billion of us believe we should help you, ask nothing in return, and trust you to learn from this experience without our interference. They believe in you, despite your mistakes. They remember the friendships they formed, the love they felt, the connections they made during our time among you. They believe those connections weren't false, that the bonds formed during our experiment were real and valuable. The coordinator stepped closer to Velmara. I was the deciding vote. As coordinator, when the collective is divided, I choose the path forward. I chose to trust you. Why? Jelkar asked bluntly. After everything we did, everything we failed to learn, why trust us? Because of this moment, the coordinator said simply. Because you came here with humility instead of pride. Because you admitted your mistakes instead of hiding them. Because you asked for help instead of demanding it. These are not the actions of a species that cannot grow. These are the actions of children becoming adults, and adults make mistakes but learn from them. She gestured, and the scene changed again. They saw the doomsday weapon floating in space, its countdown ticking towards 0. But now, a small ship approached it, tiny compared to the weapon itself, impossibly small compared to the megastructures of the cradle, but somehow more significant than both. That ship will arrive at your weapon in 3 days, the coordinator said. It carries one human engineer, Sarah Chen, who helped design the original technology your weapon is based on. She volunteered to return to the galaxy and fix what you broke. One person? Dr. Yivsha asked. To fix something that has baffled our best scientists for weeks? One person who understands the technology in ways your scientists never could, the coordinator confirmed. Sarah will not only fix the weapon, but will explain the process step by step to anyone who wishes to learn. She'll make the knowledge available to all species freely and completely. No more secrets, no more hidden complexities. You'll finally understand the technology you tried to weaponize. What's the cost? Velmara asked. There had to be a cost. Nothing came free. No cost, the coordinator said. No demands, no control, no oversight. We'll fix the weapon, share the knowledge, and then Sarah will return here. We're not staying. We're not ruling. We're not even watching over you like worried parents. We're letting you grow up. But why? Kriyoth asked, confusion evident in her voice. You could rule the galaxy easily. You have the power, the technology, the wisdom. Why refuse? The coordinator's expression grew sad. Because we tried that before. Millions of years ago, we were the rulers of this galaxy. We built everything you see, controlled everything, managed everything. We had power beyond imagination, and it made us hollow. We forgot what it meant to live, to struggle, to hope. We became cosmic accountants, managing a civilization that ran perfectly but meant nothing. She walked among them, her form seeming both solid and ethereal, ancient and young. We learned that power without purpose is emptiness. Control without challenge is death. We learned that the most important thing in the universe isn't how much you can do, but why you choose to do it. And we learned that the only way to remember these truths was to give everything up and start over. So you became small, Threnval said. You became human again, in the ancient sense. Mortal, limited, vulnerable. We did. And in those 300,000 years, we learned more than we had in millions of years as gods. We learned about love from relationships that could end. We learned about value from resources that were scarce. We learned about courage from facing dangers we couldn't simply erase. We learned about hope from working toward futures we might not see. The coordinator turned to face them all. Now we remember everything, what we were and what we became. We remember godhood and mortality, power and limitation. We're whole again, but not the same as we were before. We're better, and that's what we want for you. You want us to learn what you learned? Velmara said. We want you to have the choice to learn, the coordinator corrected. We can't force growth. We can't mandate wisdom. We can only provide opportunities and hope you choose to take them. This crisis, this moment of helplessness and humility, is an opportunity. What you do with it determines your future. Commander Jelkar stepped forward. The proud Kryn warrior had been quiet for most of this encounter, his warrior's pride struggling with the reality of his species' insignificance compared to humanity's true power. Now he spoke, his voice rough with emotion. We Kryn have a saying. Honor is earned through strength and strength through victory. For my entire life I believed this. I believed that might made right, that power determined worth. I called humans cowards for their caution. I called them weak for their restraint. I pushed for us to weaponize their technology because I thought we could become stronger. He looked at the coordinator, and Velmara saw something she'd never seen in a Kryn before. Genuine humility. I was wrong, Jelkar continued. True strength is having power and choosing not to use it. True honor is being able to destroy and choosing to build instead. You showed us this every day you lived among us, and I was too blind to see. My people were too blind to see. Not all of you, the coordinator said gently. Some Kryn understood. Some became friends with humans, learned from them, grew beyond the old warrior ways. Your species isn't lost, Commander. It's just learning. Will we survive the learning? Jelkar asked. That depends on you. On all of you. The coordinator looked at each of them in turn. When Sarah fixes the weapon, you'll have a choice. You can destroy the weapon and never build another, learning that some knowledge is too dangerous. Or you can try to improve it, thinking you can make it safe, repeating the same mistakes. Or you can study it to understand the principles, then choose a different path entirely. Your choice will tell us whether you've truly learned anything. We'll destroy it, Velmara said immediately. I'll make certain of it. You'll face resistance, the coordinator warned. Many in your council will want to keep it, to control it, to have that power available just in case. They'll argue that destroying it leaves you vulnerable. They'll say that threats exist that might require such weapons. Then I'll remind them of this moment, Velmara replied. I'll remind them that we built a weapon to make us safe and it nearly destroyed us. I'll remind them that the most powerful species in the galaxy chooses not to rule, not to control, not to dominate. And if reminders aren't enough, I'll use every bit of political power I have to make sure that weapon becomes dust. The coordinator smiled. That's the kind of resolve that convinced us to help. That fire, that determination to choose wisdom over power, that's what we hope to teach you. But teaching is done, isn't it? Krioth asked sadly. You're not coming back. You're staying here in the cradle and we're on our own. Not entirely on our own, Captain Zelnor said. They're leaving us their example. Every warning they gave that we ignored is recorded. Every piece of wisdom they shared is documented. Every friendship they formed is remembered. The humans taught us for 3,000 years. The lessons are there if we choose to learn them. Exactly, the coordinator agreed. We won't be watching over you, but we're not abandoning you either. We'll maintain embassies, small outposts where species can come to learn if they choose. We'll answer questions about technology, about history, about anything you want to know, but we won't interfere. We won't govern. We won't rescue you from every mistake. What about threats? Jelkar asked. The void entities, the dangers from dark space, the things even we don't understand yet. Will you help if we face something we truly can't handle? The coordinator considered this carefully. If the galaxy itself faces extinction, if there's a threat that could destroy all life, then yes, we'll intervene. But we'll wait until you've exhausted your own options first. You need to learn to defend yourselves, to solve your own problems. We can't be your eternal guardians. Fair enough, Jelkar said. Better to face dangers and grow stronger than hide behind protectors and remain weak. Now you're learning, the coordinator said with approval. The scene shifted one final time, and they found themselves back in the garden. But now a doorway stood open, showing their ship ready to depart. It's time for you to return, the coordinator said. Sarah's ship is already on its way. She'll arrive at the weapon in 3 days, as I said. Be ready to learn, not just how to fix the weapon, but why it needed fixing in the first place. Velmara started toward the door, then turned back. Will we see you again? Not humanity, but you specifically? Perhaps, the coordinator said. I'll be rotating into embassy duty in a few decades. I've grown fond of the younger species despite all their flaws. Or perhaps because of them. Perfection is boring. Growth is beautiful. Thank you, Velmara said simply. For everything. For your patience with us. For your kindness when we didn't deserve it. For trusting us now when you have every reason not to. Don't thank me yet, the coordinator replied with a slight smile. Thank me when you've proven we made the right choice. The team boarded their ship and began the journey back through the dead zones. The barrier opened for them again, and soon they were back in normal space heading toward Unity Station. Do you think we'll succeed? Krioth asked Velmara as they traveled. Do you think we can really change? As individuals, perhaps, but as a civilization? I don't know, Vilmara admitted. Change is hard, especially for entire species. Some will resist. Some will refuse to learn. Some will call me a fool for wanting to destroy the weapon instead of keeping it. But you're going to try anyway, Kreoth observed. I'm going to try anyway, because the humans believed in us enough to give us another chance. The least we can do is try to be worthy of that belief. 3 days later, Sarah Chen's ship arrived at the Doomsday Weapon. She was a small woman, elderly, with kind eyes and steady hands. She looked exactly like she had before humans departed. They could wear any form they chose now, but she had selected her original body, the one she'd worn during her mortal years. The galaxy watched as she worked. Not just scientists, but ordinary people across hundreds of worlds. The broadcast went everywhere, showing every step of the process. Sarah explained each action in simple terms, translating complex quantum mechanics into concepts that anyone could understand. The weapon's core problem, she said as she worked, is that it tries to force matter and energy into states that don't want to exist. It's like trying to push a ball uphill constantly. Eventually, the ball rolls back down, and when it does, it releases all that stored energy at once. The explosion you were facing. She adjusted something in the weapon's core, her movements precise and confident. The fix is simple once you understand it. Don't force anything. Let the quantum states flow naturally. Guide them gently instead of constraining them. Power doesn't come from force. It comes from working with reality, not against it. In 17 minutes, she stabilized the weapon. In another hour, she had completely deactivated it. In 3 hours, she had taught a dozen species enough about quantum mechanics that they could understand what had gone wrong and why. Now comes the hard part, Sarah said, looking directly into the camera. You have a choice. This weapon can be destroyed, and all knowledge of how to build it erased. Or you can keep it, thinking you can control it now that you understand it better. Or you can study it to understand the principles, then choose to build something else, something better. She paused, letting her words sink in. I can't make this choice for you, but I can tell you what humanity learned over millions of years. The most dangerous weapon isn't one that can destroy planets or stars. It's the belief that having such weapons makes you safe. True safety comes from wisdom, from cooperation, from making friends instead of enemies. The most powerful shield isn't made of energy or metal. It's made of trust. Sarah left the weapon floating in space, deactivated and harmless, and began her journey back to the cradle. The galaxy debated for weeks. Some wanted to keep the weapon. Some wanted to study it. Some wanted to destroy it. Vilmara stood before the Galactic Council and made her case. She showed them recordings of the cradle, of humanity's true power, of the coordinator's words. She reminded them that the most powerful species in the galaxy had chosen peace over dominion, wisdom over control. We have a chance to learn from them, she said. We have a chance to be better than we were, but only if we choose growth over power, wisdom over force. I move that the weapon be destroyed completely, and that we establish new laws prohibiting the development of such weapons in the future. The vote was closer than she hoped, but it passed. The weapon was destroyed in a controlled detonation that lit up space like a brief new star. The galaxy began to change. Slowly, gradually, species started reviewing human proposals they had rejected. They implemented safety standards they had once called excessive. They avoided actions humans had warned against. They learned. Not everyone learned. Some species remained proud, convinced they knew better. Some rejected the idea that humanity was as ancient and powerful as the evidence showed. Some called Vilmara a fool for destroying the weapon. But enough learned. Enough changed. Enough grew. The Galactic Council reformed itself, restructuring to remove the hierarchy that had placed some species above others. The human seat remained empty but honored, with a plaque that read, "To those who built this galaxy, then chose to forget themselves to learn humility. May we prove worthy of their patience and trust." Vilmara stood in the reformed chambers looking at that empty seat. Ambassadors from 47 species sat in a circle now, facing each other as equals. No more podiums, no more hierarchy, just cooperation. Do you think they're watching? Kreoth asked, standing beside her. Probably, Vilmara said. But more importantly, they're hoping. Hoping we become something worth knowing. Hoping we grow into wisdom instead of just power. Hoping we learn the lessons they paid so dearly to teach us. Through the viewports, stars shone in the darkness, ancient and eternal. Somewhere out there in the dead zones, humanity lived in their true form, watching, waiting, hoping their children would grow wise And in the cradle, the coordinator smiled as she monitored the news from the galaxy. The younger species were learning, slowly but surely. They were making mistakes, but they were also making progress. They were growing up. Will it be enough? Another consciousness asked through their shared connection. Time will tell, the coordinator replied. But we've given them the tools they need. The rest is up to them. That's what it means to let your children grow. You give them everything you can, then trust them to find their own way. And if they fail? Then we'll be here, ready to help them try again. That's what family does. That's what we learned when we were small. Now it's their turn to learn. In the galaxy beyond, species continued their daily lives, facing challenges and making choices. The humans were gone, but their legacy remained. Not in technology or weapons or grand structures, but in the simple truth they had demonstrated through their actions. True strength lies in choosing not to use your power. True wisdom comes from knowing your limitations, and true greatness is measured not by what you can take, but by what you choose to give. The galaxy was learning, slowly, imperfectly, but learning nonetheless. And in the cradle, humanity watched their children grow, proud and patient and hopeful for what they might become.